For many, going to Alaska is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and port excursions are pretty much a necessity to get a taste of just how unique America's 49th state truly is. But when you're traveling with family, those shore excursion costs can really start to add up. So I decided to try out Turo, a car-sharing program, for the very first time to see if my family would be able to see more during our time in port, but for a lot less money. Hi, I'm Tiffany from Destination for Vacation. Thanks for joining me. What many cruisers to Alaska quickly start to realize is you can easily spend just as much, if not more, on shore excursions for your trip as you do on cruise fare. And sometimes seeing more than 2 places on your must-visit list involves booking more than one excursion, which, aside from the cost of doing so, may not work out scheduling-wise since time in port is often limited, and many excursions typically start around the same time. For a port stop in Juneau on my most recent cruise, I decided to try to make it to 4 places that my family had not yet visited but had always wanted to. The Mendenhall Glacier in Nugget Falls, the Macaulay Salmon Hatchery, Glacier Gardens Rainforest Adventure, and the National Shrine of St. Therese. I was on a strict budget for this cruise, trying to meet a challenge of ensuring that the total expenses for all my shore excursions for the trip equaled less than what I had paid for my cruise fare, while still visiting at least 2 destinations in each port that I've been meaning to see but just haven't made it to yet. Initially, I was going to try a combination of public transport and taxis for my Juneau excursions, but I had some reservations about this approach because of how much time I might lose, as well as their availability given some of the destinations I was traveling to. But then, the night before we were scheduled to arrive in Juneau, an idea came to me. Why not try out Turo? If you're not familiar with Turo, it's kind of like an Airbnb for cars. Car owners rent out their vehicles using this website. While I had heard about Turo, I had never actually tried to use it before. I didn't want to lose time traveling to Juneau's airport to pick up a rental car, so it seemed like as good a time as any to give Turo a try because I could pick up and drop off the car right at the cruise terminal, for an additional fee, of course. But as they say, time is money, and I wanted to be able to visit all 4 places without feeling rushed. So losing time on a shuttle to and from a rental counter at the airport just didn't seem like it was a good idea. So I hopped on Turo's website and started looking. Personally, I think Turo's website is very user-friendly. You simply enter the location, dates you want the car, and the pickup and drop-off times. Then you'll see which cars are available. As you can imagine, selection of cars the night before docking in Juneau with 4 additional cruise ships is going to be a bit limited. And because I was booking very last minute, I had a choice of about 5 cars at that point. And of course, pricing reflected this. But if you plan ahead by a couple of weeks, you can see that you'll have plenty to choose from. I selected a car that seemed to be a good fit with an owner who had a 5-star rating and had previously hosted more than 100 times. After reading the information about the car, her policies, and her previous customers' reviews, I decided to proceed. Our ship wasn't arriving to Juneau until 12:30, so I reserved the car from 1 o'clock to 8 o'clock. While booking, you'll specify a pickup location. I chose to have her deliver the car to me near the cruise terminal for an additional $40. At checkout, you'll enter your basic information and then decide if you want to add insurance or decline it. No different than a car rental agency. Then you enter your credit card information and click Book this trip. Right away, the owner started communicating with me. You can use the app for communication, but just know that these messages are also delivered to your email. She asked for the name of the ship I was sailing on, and she dropped the car off in a parking lot directly across from the ship, sending me pictures and details about the location so I would know exactly where to go. After disembarking my ship at 1 o'clock, I found the car right away. Once there, I messaged her using the app, and she remotely unlocked it and let me know where to find the key. At this point, the app will ask you to examine the outside of the car and take about 15 or more pictures to document its condition. So I looked for any dings or scratches, no matter how minor, and took pictures of them using the app, which is extremely easy to use even for those people who aren't the most technologically advanced, like me. Then you're prompted to take pictures of the interior of the car. After that, you're good to go. The whole process takes less than 5 minutes. Driving in Juneau is an absolute breeze, so I had no problems making it to my first stop, the Macaulay Salmon Hatchery, about 4 miles away. It costs $7 per adult and $5 per child, so a family of 4 would pay $24 to visit. Holland America, the line I was sailing on for this particular cruise, offered excursions to Mendenhall Glacier that included a stop at the hatchery for $144.95 per person. This was the only organized ship excursion through Holland America that I saw during my sailing for the hatchery. But there was a non-ship excursion that visits the hatchery and the Glacier Gardens Rainforest Adventure called the Juneau Highlights Land Tour that you could book through Alaska Shore Tours website for $149 per person. Once at the hatchery, I met Rich, who provided a great overview of the life of the different salmon in the area and the general operations of the facility. When I told him I had rented a car and of my plans, he made a few travel suggestions that weren't on my radar, including driving out to Douglas Island or just continuing on the Glacier Highway past the shrine to the end of the road. He told me that it's a beautiful drive along the coastline that many visitors to the area never see. After about 40 miles, the road just abruptly stops. I mentally filed these ideas away for my next visit to Juneau since I already had a pretty ambitious itinerary for this visit. After spending not quite an hour at the hatchery, I got a little distracted watching these two who seemed very interested in the hatchery. I returned to the car and headed on to my next stop, 19 miles away. After a beautiful drive along the Glacier Highway, I easily found the National Shrine of St. Therese. The shrine costs nothing to visit, but donations are always welcome. And there's also a gift shop on site. As of the date of this recording, there are no organized cruise excursions to the site, nor any available to book online. With more than 45 acres overlooking the Lynn Canal, I ended up spending about an hour and a half enjoying this serene retreat, as well as the antics of its resident marmots. Now it was time to get back in the car and drive the 16 miles to Mendenhall Glacier. I arrived about 45 minutes before the visitor center was scheduled to close. Thinking that the crowds would have thinned out by this point, I was shocked to see just how packed it was. So many people were waiting on their buses and shuttles to pick them up, and many were inside the visitors center just killing time. Originally, I planned on touring the visitor center and then walking the 1 mile out to Nugget Falls, but it was just way too crowded there to enjoy it, and by that point, if I walked the 2 mile round trip path to the falls, I wouldn't be able to make it to my fourth stop, the Glacier Gardens Rainforest Adventure, before it closed at 6. But I was ready to escape the crowds, so a little after 5 o'clock, I returned to the car to make my way to my last stop. Visiting Mendenhall Glacier on your own costs $5 per adult. There are a number of shore excursion options to get there. The cheapest one my ship offered during my sailing was $79.95 per person, which allowed for a 2-hour stop. Another excursion combined 2 of my destinations, offering a 90-minute stop at the glacier and then a tour of Glacier Gardens for $119.95 per person, which would have been a better value for my particular itinerary. I drove the 5.5 miles to Glacier Gardens and arrived around 5:10. Since this was early May, a lot of the flowers weren't yet in bloom, so it didn't really look like the pictures and videos I'd seen. Most perennials were just starting to stretch out of dormancy and needed another 2 weeks or so before they would really start showing their colors. I was the only independent traveler there. The place felt empty. When I was told that there would be about a 40-minute wait before the next tour was offered, I decided to change my plans. I didn't want to just sit around and wait that long for a tour, especially when the gardens weren't quite in bloom. I figured I'd much more enjoy this venue when visiting in June, July, or August, so I returned to the car and decided to take Rich from the Salmon Hatchery's suggestion of driving to the end of the road on Glacier Highway. And I'm so glad I did. It was indeed a beautiful drive with lots of pull-offs along the way. I drove to the end of the road and it felt like I had the entire highway to myself. I took my time, enjoying the ride, turning into pullouts to get out and enjoy the different views. Sadly, it was soon time to head on back to Juneau. After a quick stop to fuel up the car, I returned it to the same parking lot I had picked it up from and used the app to check the car in, with about 5 minutes to spare. I was prompted to once again take pictures of the exterior and interior of the car. The owner told me where to leave the keys, and I let her know via the app where the car was and thanked her. And that was it. A perfect day in Juneau at my leisure, away, for the most part, from all the crowds. So in the end, how much would a family of 4 have saved by using Turo for my itinerary? I paid a total of $250.58 for the car, which included taxes and the $40 fee to deliver it to the cruise port. I know, that's expensive for a one-day rental car. Had I planned ahead by a few weeks, I would have found cars at about half the price. But I didn't, so I paid the price. I also paid $15.21 to refuel the car with gas. It costs $24 for a family of 4 to visit the hatchery, and nothing to visit the shrine. $5 per adult to visit Mendenhall Glacier. Had I chosen to stay at the Glacier Gardens Rainforest Adventure, it would have cost $113.20 for a family of 4. So the grand total for my do-it-yourself shore excursion would have been $412.99 for 4 people. But I didn't end up touring the gardens. And for this trip, I actually traveled by myself to do a ship tour video of the Westerdam. So I paid a total of $272.79 for the day to scout out the 4 locations for a future family visit. As I mentioned before, none of the cruise lines or organized shore excursion companies visit the shrine, so there isn't an excursion that goes to all 4 of the places I wanted to see. Unless I took a taxi or Uber, which may be a bit pricey given the shrine's distance from town, I would have had to remove the shrine from my itinerary. Holland America, my cruise line for this trip, could get my family to the hatchery and the glacier for a cost of $144.95 per person, which also includes a salmon bake dinner. But that would total $579.80 for a family of 4. We wouldn't see the shrine nor the gardens, and it still cost $166.81 more. We could see 3 out of the 4 places on my itinerary by combining 2 different excursions. The Juneau Highlights Land Tour through the Alaska Shore Tours website, which visits the hatchery and the Glacier Gardens for $149 per person, and then add on Holland America's excursion to Mendenhall Glacier for $79.95 per person. But that would end up costing $228.95 per person for a total of $915.80, which is a whopping $502.81 more than what we would pay using Turo. Or we could opt for the combined Glacier and Gardens tour for $119.95 per person, a total of nearly $480, and just forego the hatchery and shrine. But then we're still going to pay $66.81 more to see less. Norwegian Cruise Lines is the only line that currently offers an excursion to the hatchery, glacier, and gardens, which costs $179 per adult and $129 per child. So a total of $616. But that's still $203 more than what a family of 4 would pay to go to all 4 places using Turo. Or we could take the Juneau Highlights Land Tour and then take the blue bus to Mendenhall Glacier, which is $79 per adult and $49 per child, but this would still end up costing a family of 4 $852. A final option to save some money would be to combine the Juneau Highlights Tour with public transportation to see the glacier. We could take the public bus, but the nearest stop is 1.5 miles away from the Glacier Visitor Center. According to the website, this option will take an hour and a half each way, so 3 hours of our port time just for transportation. And that doesn't include the time we'd be spending at the glacier. But with tickets costing only $4 round trip for adults and $2 round trip for children, this is a cost-effective way to get to the glacier. But even with these savings, we'd still be paying a total of $608, $200 more than our Turo do-it-ourselves excursion. So, for my itinerary at least, Turo was a winner. I realize that Turo is not going to get you on a boat to see whales, nor will it fly you to a glacier for sightseeing or dog mushing. But I do think it's a very worthy budget-friendly option to keep under consideration if you want to visit more than 2 places during your stay and still pay $100 or $200 less, especially in a port like Juneau, where so many great stops are spread apart. I loved being able to visit each place at a pace that felt right to me. No rushing to stay with the crowds, and no downtime to wait to get on board a bus. I wasn't having to walk a mile or 2 to get on a bus to the glacier, or combine a variety of transportation options to get to all of the places I wanted to go. I loved the freedom of being able to stop whenever I saw something interesting. And I've now been to the end of the road in Juneau. How many cruise passengers can say that? But there were also lessons learned for next time I decide to use Turo. My biggest mistake with all of this was not getting my act together and reserving a car earlier. Had I done so by just a week or 2, I could have saved another $100. Also, if you don't already have an account with Turo, be sure to set yours up using the app while you're on land. Don't wait until you're on a cruise ship, like I did. Because one of the steps is verifying your phone number, and you only have so many hours to do so. It's easy. They'll text you a code. But you're not going to get that text while your ship's at sea, which means you risk cancellation of your rental if you don't verify within the specified period of time. In my case, everything worked out fine in the end, but I put the owner through a few extra steps, which I could have avoided if I had already set up my Turo account prior to sailing. But both the car's owner and Turo's customer service were great to work with to remedy the situation. And that was the only hiccup in the whole process, which was totally my fault. So, would I use Turo again in Alaska? Absolutely. It's available in Sitka, Skagway, and Ketchikan. The more travelers you have in your party, the more cost-effective this option is going to be. But even when you're traveling solo, I think this is an option worth exploring. I saw so much more of Juneau's stunning scenery simply by hitting the road on my own. And even though I may have finagled a cheaper itinerary by using some public transportation options, the ease of this trip and the solitude I experienced were well worth any differences in price. During much of the day, I felt like I had a little corner of Alaska all to myself. And that feeling, at least in my opinion, is priceless. Thanks for watching. I hope you can join me again soon in one of these videos. Until then, here's hoping your next adventure is just around the corner.